Hey guys, it's Johnny here from Spirits People, and I am back in the kitchen. And today we are going to be looking at some dried grapes. That's right, raisins, sultanas, and currants. We're going to be focusing on the smell and the taste of these different versions of dried grapes. So these kind of flavors make a regular appearance in my tasting notes, and yeah, I just wanted to do an experiment and share it with you guys. So yep, here we go. Just real quick before we jump into the video, I want to say a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. Your support really means a lot to me, and if you haven't joined me over there, I'll drop a link here below and also in the description. You can follow the link and join me over there. Also, if you like these videos, please hit the like and subscribe button, and if you want to get notified when new videos come out, hit that bell. So my question today is, can you really tell the difference between raisins and sultanas? And also, where does currants fit into this whole thing? I've never really used it in a tasting note, but I wanted to put it into the mix because of its relationship with the raisins and sultanas. So just like my other videos I've done, I'll be pouring... Can you pour raisins? I'll be adding raisins and sultanas and currants to these tasting glasses, and I'm gonna see if I can actually get some smell out of the glass. That didn't work. All right, we have now poured the dried grapes into my tasting glasses. And there's a visual representation of the process and the grape that represents the dried fruits here in the glass. On the left, we have the raisin, which is a very dark and quite large dried grape. The raisin itself has been either dried on the vine or taken off the vine and dried on the ground on some brown paper in between the vines, and then processed and sent off and packaged and all that kind of stuff. So a very natural product, and something I'm having a lot of fun memories of as a kid, eating raisins out of the small little boxes that I would get either at school or at my grandma's house. So yeah, I have a very fond memory and very clear memory of raisins. I do tend to add raisins as a tasting note to a lot of the different spirits that I try, especially when you look at something like a cognac and an armagnac, which is also a grape-based spirit, but also something I tend to get on American whiskeys, Canadian whiskeys, even Scotch and all kinds of malt whiskeys, and even some rums. I mean, there's lots of things that I taste where I get the sensation of raisins. So what I wanted to do now is to start comparing that tasting note specifically to the sultanas, which is actually the same grape. It's processed differently. Sultanas is different in the way that it's been taken off the vines. It's been left with a solvent on it. It usually is an oil base, but also in the US you use sulfur dioxide on this product to maintain that yellowish color that you get in the US. Now here in Europe it's slightly different. They're not as bright and yellow because it's not the same type of solvent that it's been treated with. So what the solvent does to the sultanas is that it speeds up the process, and it also maintains that lighter color because of the lighter grape that it's been made from. I do use sultanas sometimes when I feel like I have this sensation of raisin, but it's a little bit more fruit forward. So what I wanted to do today is test that theory and also put it up against the final contender here, the currants. So the currants is a smaller darker grape, and it's been dried for an extended period. So in a similar fashion to the raisins, either on the vines or on the ground. So they've been dried for probably up to 3 weeks, whereas the raisins is probably only like 4 to 5 days. So yeah, the different versions lined up here, and what I'll do is I'll try to see if I can nose anything out of the glass. It can be a little bit difficult because dried fruit, especially these ones here, is contained within the skin. So all of the sugary contents is contained. And yeah, I may have to jump into some tasting here just to get a little bit more out of these, but we'll see what happens. All right, so I'm starting with the raisins here, and just looking at it in the glass, it's kind of a representation of that nice sun-dried fruit and a very natural product. So there's actually quite a bit of smell coming out of this, but it's a weird kind of subdued, and it doesn't remind me at all of raisins when I'm just smelling it. Yeah, I'm just not getting the aromas out of the glass that I really am looking for, and it's not smelling these. It's not like smelling anything in a spirit where you actually get raisins. This here is a very subdued version of that. So yeah, let's taste these and see what happens. That's new. It's funny how you get a different sensation of tasting and smelling something when you think about the process. So the process here is obviously it's been sun-dried. It feels very fresh, it feels very summery, and it just feels very natural. It's a natural sugar bomb in there, but it's like a dark sugar. You can definitely taste that this is a grape-based sugar, so you get that grape sensation, but obviously because all of the water is kind of dissolved in the sun, it's a very dense version of that. So it's quite dark and it's quite gloomy, if you will, like a mix of like very dark and gloomy wintry sensation that you would get on maybe a fruit cake, like a Christmas cake and stuff like that, where you use a lot of these kind of fruits, but also that summery sensation, which is why probably you get these kind of tasting notes from a lot of different spirits, because a lot of spirits will have those kind of different aspects that you can play with, like a summery or wintry feel to a spirit can both bring a sensation of raisins. Interesting. I'll put this down here for now. I'll jump over to the Sultanas, which I'm expecting to bring a little bit more of that fruit juice forwardness, because this one here is quite dry. Although the sugar is quite dense, it's a drying sensation to some degree. All right, so I've moved over to the Sultanas now, and yeah, one thing I wanted to kind of mention here is, again, like we're talking about memories and the fact that memories will trigger your tasting notes when you taste spirits, and Sultanas is one of those things that I didn't necessarily have until a little bit later in life. Like raisins, I have a very long-standing memory with, if you will, and Sultanas is one of those things, like, to me, outside of these kind of experiments here, is in a sense like it's all the same. It's the same thing. But I will say though, now that we're starting to get a little bit geeky, a little bit nerdy here about the actual flavor contents, there should be a difference here. It's been sped up. The process has happened a lot faster than on the raisin side, where it's been naturally dried in the sun. Here it's been dehydrated with the solvent on it, so it should in reality have a different flavor characteristics to it. Very interestingly, there's a very significant difference on the nose here. On the nose, although not really nearly as much as on the palate, because these are kind of like dried out, but on the nose, the raisins actually had quite a recognizable aroma characteristics there. On this one here, on the Sultanas, I barely smell anything. It's very subdued. It's quite neutral actually. It's very interesting. All right, let's taste it, see what happens. So I kind of had to go back and forth there a little bit between the raisins and Sultanas. because they're very similar, but there's something that's very different between the two. And I'm still trying to process what that difference is. Almost similar to when you look at aging a spirit, like aging a nice whiskey in a barrel. If you try to speed up that process, you're going to lose some of that complexity. I think this is what that translates to. So over here you have a beautiful naturally aged spirit where the sugar, the grape sugars are in there. They've been maintained. They've had a chance to just sit there and maintain all that sugar and let the sun naturally evaporate those liquids from within. And over here what you have is like human beings trying to trick nature and speed up the process. It has a similar flavor characteristics to it, but it's not as complex. It's simpler. It's a much simpler version of a raisin. And that's quite interesting. All right, so currants. We are dealing with a different grape now, so I'm expecting a different flavor characteristics altogether. I'm expecting this to probably be closer to a raisin side of things because of the process that this has gone through. It's a smaller grape, so obviously there's less liquid in the grape itself, but also more dense concentration of sugar. And then at the same time, this has been dried out for an extended period, all the way up to 3 weeks potentially. So I'm expecting almost like a super aged spirit sensation on this one here versus the raisins. So let's see what happens. Don't drink dry grapes out of glasses. Interesting. So what I'm not getting here is the complexity that I thought I was going to get. Because of the aging of the currants versus the raisins, I thought that there was going to be a much more concentrated version of the sugary contents that I would get from the raisin. However, it is quite a similar profile to the raisin, but it's more subdued. I think you could probably pick out the two in a blind tasting if you thought about it as ABV. So if you think about the raisin as quite a high ABV, because you get a lot of flavor out of the raisin, but on the currant you kind of get a similar profile, although it's slightly different. It just feels like it's a lower ABV. I'm not sure if I would necessarily think about using currants in my tasting notes based off of this experiment, but maybe something that's worth exploring a little bit more. Maybe if I start eating currants, and this is again coming down to the memory of things. Like I have a very strong memory of raisins, a very subtle and young memory of sultanas, and a very recent memory of currants. I didn't really see the point of eating currants because I thought they were just small raisins, which in its essence is what they are, but they are different grapes, so should offer a different profile. I think the one that really stands out to me as quite interesting is the sultana here. And I know that sultanas might be made differently around the world, so you might have different grapes used. I know in Australia they use different grapes. Generally it's the Thompson seedless that's used across the board, but other grapes are also being used. I think the general sensation I get is that the sultanas has this feel of a younger raisin, which it is, and it's very strange, and especially when you put it in context of tasting spirits. And I'll have to go back and look at my tasting notes now because I don't have a kind of clear memory of using raisin versus sultana in my tasting notes in reference of aging of spirit or style of spirit, which now I'm kind of intrigued. I feel like the raisins had that kind of darker, more natural and much more vibrant flavor profile, whereas the Sultanas had a more fresh, younger, more simplistic profile, but the same profile. So yeah, there's that. Who knew? That's it. That was fun. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was fun for me to make, and yeah, as a tasting note nerd and a spirits geek, this is definitely fun, and yeah, I hope you guys like these videos, and yeah, if you do, please hit the like button and the subscribe button as well, and if you want to get notified when new videos comes out, please hit the bell icon as well. And yeah, finally, if you want to show me some support, if you want to join me over on Patreon, I do have some different tiers, and also these videos will come out on Patreon ahead of time before they hit YouTube. So if you want to get a sneak peek or just can't wait until the next video comes out, yeah, just join me over there. That's it. Hope you guys enjoy, and peace out.